So thank you, good afternoon. Thank you for your presence. I don't think I need it. Thank you very much. So we would like to address this keynote to some ongoing challenges that we face when working with social systems such as organizations. So distinctly based consulting, that's what we do, and in social systems theory, and second are cybernetics. That's what we use as premise for our work and also as premise for powerful solutions. And to give you the context why we are talking about it, as you all maybe experience, we have have a lot of sectors going to a transition. We have the banking sector in transition, and they have less branches. The banking business is mostly taking place on the internet. And for the past while, air passengers have been able to check in not only themselves but also their luggage. For instance, to come here, my flight, I could print my baggage tag at home, put it on my bag, and bring it to the drop-off. And I couldn't do everything without seeing a human being and come to here. So I made my check-in, put my luggage in there, and came here. It's a little bit strange for us that we are used to travel where seeing human beings. Robot lawyers, I don't know if everybody is aware of it, but in Brazil there are some projects already where legal process can be, some of them, the whole process can be done through robots. So they expect that this offers efficient alternatives to the legal process in traditional way, but that's not very difficult in Brazil because the processes there are very, very hard. So automated processes and artificial intelligence are obviously taking over the services sector. That's something that for me was future thinking, so it was like science fiction, and now we are living in this this era. We know that from production lines that robots can work on products and do it better than some human beings. But now we are going the next level. Humans are not anymore an indispensable source of added value in service, not all the services. We have colleagues that are working even in projects where people can have advice from psychologists, robot psychologists, so they can have whole therapies with a robot, with a AI. So there seems to be no limits for this idea. On the other hand, we work with organizations, and up to now most decisions have been taken by humans. And from a social theory point of view, organizations are built on the through the communications of decisions. This is the basic element of every organization, this communication of decisions. And this is what gives the allows the system to autopoiesis, so they can build themselves through decisions. One decision leads to the next one decision, and so on. They can exist as organizations. The question is that we want to address for this presentation is if machines decide for humans, how can we still validate human as decision makers? So you have seen this. How can it? Yeah. So we have to check these boxes still, but someday we don't have any validation anymore, maybe. That's the question. So as we could see this example from psychologists and therapists that you can do with robots, there are also thoughts about putting the whole management decisions on robots, on AI. There are also thoughts about it. So it's an interesting development. As we know, the theories we have an influence on our reality, and that's why I will very briefly show you with which theories we work, or concepts, and where we want to come with these thoughts. So a decision, from a social systems theory point of view, is a communication that refers to selectivity. It's a communication, it's another communication, but it refers to selectivity. It has the quality that marks temporality. You have a decision, so you have the time before the decision, and you have the time after the decision. Mostly when you make a decision, the time after the decision is unknown. But the decision marks this point, this time. And decisions, the communications decision, is a unit of the selected option and all the others that was not selected. So when you decide something and you communicate it, so people are aware that there are a lot of other possibilities that you denied. This is also a characteristic. So a decision based on a distinction-based point of view is also what Luhmann, that he's the developer of the social systems theory, he also has approach from distinction-based theories. And you can see a decision as a communication that highlights the distinction between selected and non-selected alternatives. And a decision in this way makes a difference. And in this respect, decisions becomes information. So it's not only communication, it's also information. It's a momentum of something new. And to distinguish a decision from other types of communication, there is always a need to exist an observer. Thomas Fuchs also worked with social theories and social systems theory, and he worked on his paper about decisions on conditions for social decisions. And I think it's very interesting that he came to the conclusion that there must be an agent or an observer able to deal with preferences, that means also tastes and predilections, heuristics, how to say that, that not only calculations and experience, but also intuition, and that's what he focused on. Ethic, so the observer must be able to distinguish between good and bad, or good and evil. And the most important thing, he says, if you want to make a decision, you have to know about possibilities. And possibilities are not probabilities. Possibilities always included that you are, or the agent or observer is able to imagine the impossible. So if nothing is impossible, there are only probabilities. But something that's possible is not impossible. That's the thought behind it. So there are two sentences from people that I like to present. Heinz von Foster, that said, only those questions that are in principle undecidable we can decide. And Luhmann, that said, every decision presupposes that it has not yet been possible to make a decision, because if it would be decided already. So they are talking about strong decisions, and what are they? So to come to the concept of powerful decisions, we take a look on organizations and leadership. Organizations are very, very close related to leadership, and a very, very important question, a very important issue in organizations is the decision which person may be responsible for what type of decision. And the leadership is about uncertainty absorption. So even if I don't have a hierarchy, very strong hierarchy, I have to be very clear who is for which kind of decision responsible, so that the people can have orientation and go further. So organizational decisions are made to reduce uncertainty, but this reduction only happens when there is someone or something, an organization, for instance, or a system, that takes responsibility for the decision. So powerful decisions, Luhmann tried to make a definition for powerful decisions, and he said if it would be possible to take all the possibilities that we have in the moment before the decision and calculate them all, a powerful decision would be the decision that excludes the most other possibilities, and this means it takes the most responsibility. The more the environment offers constraints, rules, and restrictions for decisions, the less value the decisions have. So you can have an example. If a junior level manager has to take a decision and he has only a very small budget and only a few people to work with and only a small project, his decision has not the value, as Luhmann said, as a powerful decision. There are not so much responsibility. There are some rules and constraints that he can't go further. But when machines are programmed to decide, they need an environment full of rules and constraints. So Google car or a driverless car can work when the environment is very well ruled, very well functioned. And therefore, machines are not able to make strong or powerful decisions. As a result, if we want to benefit of machine services, we have to be willing to pay the price of living in environment areas with less possibilities. This would be so the thoughts that we could have from our theories. And Philipp is very much involved every day with organizations and use a lot of concepts from systems theory and also a lot of things that comes from second order cybernetics. And it's very interesting how this work on daily and practical basis. So please, Philipp.
Thank you. Is this the button I have to press? Yes. So as Tilia has introduced, if we look to leadership and we ask where is a very basic distinction between where leadership takes place or where leadership does not take place, we very quickly come to decisions are taken or not. And a very practice-oriented definition or proposal to see decisions or leadership comes from Elizabeth Ferrari, a dear colleague of us that has passed last year. To make strong or effectual decisions in difficult situations, to give others support and orientation without being entitled to always be able to do so. Therefore, strong decisions give orientation, they give stability in complex situations. The measure for strong can be deducted from persistence towards the power of alternatives and influencing factors. It's one way of looking at it. We can find many. A relevant cognition feature could also be how many people follow the decision. When does a decision in an organizational context become a decision? Just because it's taken? No, because an action takes place after it. So decision as a basis, fine, but not all relevant context factors from all relevant sources and backgrounds can be taken into consideration when we're coding artificial intelligence. And just to open with a provocative question that will be answered later, and how much of the relevant context information for decisions really are data? Let me tell you a very short neighborhood story. In Vienna, I have a 99-year-old grandmother that lives with an 18-year-old dog. So an interesting coexistence that is not exactly the most mobile one, as you may guess. And they live in a small house in a small little garden. They are the only house in the street. And right next to this little house, and being the only one in the street, starts a forest. And this coexistence has been like that for at least 18 years. And the highlight of my grandmother is if once a day she makes it all the way from her house to the fence at the end of the garden. And the good days are the ones where she makes that, where she can do that, where she can walk those 30, 40 little steps. And then she can open the door, and the highlight of the door of the dog would be that this day he can walk out on the street. And he cannot walk very far because he's so old, he's half blind, he has no teeth. If you would see the picture, it's not only harmless, you would want to help them. And a few weeks ago was an interesting little coincidence. After a peaceful life in this little house that is very unspectacular, and this all of a sudden, 2 police officers show up while exactly this happens. The dog walks out on the street. My grandmother stands at the fence. And the 2 police officers, a woman and a man, walked to my grandmother and said, "Your dog has no," how do you call it in English, a muzzle. No muzzle, and is not attached to a leash. A leash, thank you. This is forbidden. You have to pay 25 euros. And my grandmother, you may guess, if you become 99 years old, it's usually not because of a lack of character. She stands there trembling, saying, "Why should I pay? Nothing is wrong. This dog never bit anybody. Nothing ever happened. This is how we used to live. Everybody in the neighborhood knows about it. There's never been an issue." And those 2 police officers answered, "Once again, lady, either you pay 25 euros now or you will have a high fine." And she just couldn't adapt to this restriction and to this unused context in a second. She couldn't even answer a second time or think about it. The 2 left. And a few weeks later, she received a fine of 500 euros, and her monthly pension is around 800 euros. So what I'm trying to say here is this is what can happen if we decide in a very narrow context and we don't look at the whole context. We know a few side effects that may be worth watching out for when progressing without taking care in consideration second-order cybernetics. Step by step, humans get used to the most improbable situations. This effect is well described, for example, in Rothschild's book, 99 Questions to Judaism, on the example of the extermination process of the Jews and other minorities during the Third Reich. First, they lived in ghettos, then they were transported to labor camps. We know how far this development went during the Nazi regime, and we know, and it has been documented, that the things, the cruelties that have been discovered when the concentration camps were freed in 1945 by the Allies, they did not happen 36, 37, 38 when the concentration camps were built and the first human beings were deported there. So it has been build up in such a short period of time, 5, 7 years. I think this is nothing. We know how far this development went. The people were getting used to each of those steps and accepted it one by one. It was possible. It's incredible how fast the system adapted. We also all, I think, know this boiled frog effect. If you put a frog in cold water, he will try to jump out. You heat the water step by step. The warmer the water gets, the frog will less and less try to jump out until he boils in the water. Whether if the story is true or not, everybody knows the metaphor, and it says what it should say. Thinking this a few steps further, artificial intelligence services need to follow coded rules. But humans have the choice to decide beyond narrow rules, depending on the given context. Second-order cybernetics concepts help us to understand our role in building reality and stimulate self-reflection. Through self-reflection, critical thinking, double and triple loop learning, deutero-learning, as Gregory Bateson called it, we have a chance to contextualize and distinguish our decisions compared to artificial intelligence that has no consciousness. Going back to the organizational situation, just to give you one of so many paradoxes. In flat hierarchies, in order to manage complexity and short reaction time, we need highly responsible decisions, even from collaborators on so-called lower hierarchical levels, if they still exist. We need their creativity for solutions in complex situations, and at the same time, using artificial intelligence, we standardize working processes and subordinate human actions to this standardization, to the electronic workflow. Okay. Decisions in living systems are not based on data. In prototypical double bindings or leadership issues, the task is to be able to make decisions while missing data. And any of these decisions have major impact on the framework and therefore on the quality of our living conditions. The responsibility of a leader is to make decisions for the future, but the future is uncertain, per definition, lack of data. The machine may take decision, but we still need someone to take the responsibility for the consequence of this decision. We all know examples. Since when we're running out of time, I'll be very short. Self-driving car has an accident. Who is responsible? Internet banking criminality. I don't know about the US, but in Europe I know enough bankers to know how much money it costs the banks that people hack the accounts. Web-based sold services that do never take place, but we have paid for them. The results? Potentially unhappy clients. People usually do not appreciate being treated like machines. And here we come back to Norbert Wiener, who when he published Cybernetics already said, the problem is not the machines that we will develop, the problem is that humans do not want to be treated like machines, which is going to happen. So, let's kind of sum up. What still differentiates artificial intelligence based on first-order cybernetics from social or complex systems? Feelings, a free will, needs, consciousness, intuition, responsibility, imagination. I'm sure there's more. Those are just the ones we have found when we did this little presentation in the last 3 days. But the point is, all of them are essential for strong decisions that give orientation. And I would like to invite Tilia to come back for a little conclusion. Do you want to go ahead?
In order to be able to make clear decisions, as we have seen, machines need a narrow frame of rules. As a consequence, we as humans have to be willing to live within this narrow frame of rules in situations where we let machines decide. We can also say, in this situation, I would prefer an AI. In other situations, I can prefer another to make my own decision. Yeah?
To the same extent in which we develop artificial intelligence, we should further develop interest in self-reflection and be aware of our human abilities and responsibilities. A decision only reduces uncertainty when it has an evident responsible authority.
Yeah, up to now, only humans have the preconditions for social decisions. And it's up to us to think about it and decide what we want to do with this condition that we have. That was
Thank you.
Thank you.